Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a wonderful weekend and an even better game week. As you can see for myself, a pretty sizable red arrow from 63 to 194k. However, nonetheless, still a very solid start, especially considering no chips used. And whilst it appears to be a bad game week, what appears to be bad is not always so. And that is a concept we're going to touch on later because I think it is of paramount importance to your success, not just in the game, but also enjoying the game as well. We're going to be talking about my transfer plans, which you'll see are very, very interesting this time around. There's a big twist in the plot. We'll be looking at the games. I'll be giving you some match analysis, and it's pretty good this week in terms of we learned a lot. So I'm looking forward to that. And we'll be going through the players and a variety of other things. If you haven't subscribed, which 50% of you regularly watch, and you haven't done so, I would really appreciate you pressing that button. We're so close to 4,000 subscribers. Fantastic growth on the channel last week. And if we can do that again, I'm sure we'll surpass 4,000 by tomorrow, which would be absolutely magnificent. Like I said, I hope you had a wonderful weekend, but let's hop into it. We will start with Sels Supremacy itself. I mean, this guy just keeps on returning for me, and he just keeps on putting up the goods, especially when so many other keepers are failing to a different extent. Obviously, Henderson got an 8-pointer for his owners, which is wonderful, but delighted with Sels. Even when he makes no saves, no clean sheets, no penalty saves, still managed to come away with a 5-pointer from a very, very long assist to Chris Wood. West Ham at home, Newcastle at home, two sides that are in a little bit of trouble. Obviously, West Ham have got a win today, but from what I've heard, that's one of the two games where there won't be any analysis because I haven't seen it. They weren't exactly the sharpest, and United probably should have killed the game, maybe even in the first half. So with Sels, very happy going forward, but you'll see something about all of the players going forward. And yeah, just I've spoken so highly of him. I've waxed lyrical. There's probably no need to do that again. Just going to keep letting him ride. Really like him in the short term, and then we'll assess when the fixtures get a little bit more difficult. But in terms of what Nuno's doing, which we're going to come on to, absolutely magnificent. In terms of the player analysis from my team, I prefer to keep it towards the transfer plans and the match analysis section. So we're going to just keep going. Konsa, it was pretty funny. I mean, I checked it the 93rd minute. I see Konsa's on 9 points. I'm like, cool. I go check it at the 96th. I see the Evanilson goal. I also see the Mbuemo goal in the 96th. Literally happened like 5 seconds after. I was like, oh, little 14-point swing. But, those things happen, and that's okay. That's just part of the game. And you probably have good luck in loads of spots throughout the year where you probably don't give it as much importance as you should when these type of things happen. So, yeah, all good. Gvardiol, again, I mean, he's been a magnificent transfer. And obviously, 1-pointer against Fulham, but to go 10-9, especially with how my team's been performing and just the general state of the game, huge. Especially in terms of how defenders have been performing, huge. Gabriel obviously goes off with an injury, and we'll talk about him later. 1-pointer, to be honest, was I expecting a clean sheet against Liverpool? No. And you know what? Thank God they didn't keep him, because if it wasn't for Mo Salah's goal at the end, that red arrow could look sizably bigger. So delighted with that goal. And we're going to come on to a lot of the players at the end, and you'll see why. But yeah, the main thing here, Gvardiol, excellent. Could have got an attacking return as well. Foden plays it in for him from a set piece, and I think he should score. He looks to head it back across the box. I think he takes maybe a stride too many, and if he hadn't done so, we're looking at 15 points there. But you know what, so be it. And the Console's the one that, I guess, got away, but all good. Oh, actually, before we click off, just as I was about to, Lewis Hall returning with a 4-pointer on the bench, and that may very well be his last week in my squad. And you probably weren't expecting that, but you will see. Rodgers, McNeil, and Foden. We'll come on to Salah at the end. Rodgers obviously getting hooked early. I had a feeling this was going to happen because he was the one who played 90 midweek in the Champions League. So I did always think he was susceptible to the early substitution. Not reading too much into it. They do have pretty decent depth now because everyone's there, right? They've got McGinn and Ramsey to play that left-sided role. They've got Bailey on the right. They've got Duran as cover for Watkins and Rodgers up top. So they've got Philogene as well. So they could do a few things, almost two players per position. But I do think overall Rodgers' minutes should be fine. More so just a thing of who got minutes in the Champions League. McNeil, we'll talk about in the Everton section, and same with Foden. But honestly, thank God for Mo Salah, because without that 10-pointer, without that 8-point goal that he gets fairly late on, this is looking like a very, very dull game week. And considering a lot of the engaged managers who had good weeks didn't have this guy, it was huge. Obviously, vice captain on him again, and I didn't go there. I went Haaland, and he punished me for that. But this week it was a lot harder to go the Egyptian's way. But I just wanted to sing his praises because what a beautiful, beautiful man. Again, you will see in the match analysis section where there's quite a bit, and the transfer plans why I'm probably going through this bit slightly quicker. Havertz, he didn't really have much, but you know what? That chance where he chipped Kelleher and tried to lift it for Jesus at the back post, you look at the reverse angle, you look at his technique, was a little bit unlucky. The ball went that way. If it just goes the other way, if it spins the way the foot was, it goes in, and that would have been a huge goal and definitely catapulted me in rank, given his low ownership. But so be it. DCL, I think I might have had enough now. Haaland gets a 12-pointer to disappoint those who triple captained him. To be honest, I was actually kind of hoping he blanked in the game because I saw the amount of engaged managers that triple captained him, and I was like, you know what, sure, I might get some EO points in terms of EO, like in the overall ranks, but I think down the line, when I'm competing against the whole field, I think it actually makes a little bit more sense for me to hope for a triple captain blank, essentially. So all good there. I'm actually pretty happy. I think 12 points is just in the middle where at least I got something from my captain, but it wasn't too damaging that I didn't play the triple captaincy chip. And I'm very happy with the analysis that proceeded to ensure that I didn't go there. Now let's go into the match analysis, where this video becomes far more interesting, and we'll look at the transfer plans, which is also very interesting. All right, let's talk. And this is really important because it is coming up to the time where no Haaland is becoming an idea which is being toyed with more, and a lot of people are seeing it as viable, such as Andy Martin, and so am I, as you will see. In terms of City, I thought the left-hand side dynamic was poor from a creative standpoint. And I mean, I can't blame him too much, right? Like Matthias Nunes on the left, but Bernardo Silva in that left 8 was poor. Just like against Wolves, right? Doku did a good job on the left flank, I thought. Vardio was obviously great, but the left 8 really wasn't supporting them for a variety of reasons in terms of just the pace they were operating at. They weren't necessarily manufacturing things. They weren't offering a different angle. I was more Gundo play on the left side last time. So I wasn't impressed against Wolves. I wasn't impressed again. I thought it was too slow. And I think that's going to be the left-hand side dynamic that persists. Even if, let's say, one of the wingers is back next week, if you're going to have one of Gundo or Silva there, and you're not going to have De Bruyne in the side, so you have Foden at right A, so you don't have a high-volume creative passer, well then, creatively, and this was Southampton, right? I mean this with all due respect. This was Southampton. What happens when the games get significantly tougher, because they do? I think they're going to struggle. I really do, to an extent, and the supply into Haaland won't be so great. So that is something to consider. Savio was brilliant. I mean, on the right side, the amount what he showed was just so far superior to everyone else, especially creatively. He can go both ways. He can use both feet. The quality of delivery was good, and he was and the bonus point system reflected that, right? Similar to Saka against Leicester, easily, in my opinion, the best player on the pitch. Guardiola was also very, very impressive. From a defensive standpoint, he was magnificent. If he got on the ball a little bit more, I think City maybe could have had a bit more from that left side. But overall, Savio was brilliant. And I think that right wing slot is pretty much all his. And what I mean by the impressive striking level is just you see it with the likes of De Bruyne and Bruno. Whenever they hit the ball, and I don't just mean in terms of like shooting, I mean just short passes, long passes, soft touches around the corners. It's always clean, and the contact's always very precise. And Savio has that to an extent. So I thought that was impressive and something I noticed. Haaland, obviously, look, he racked up the XG and he missed a few big chances, a couple headers, and then the last one in the 90-ish minute where Foden set him up. Now, overall, even though he had those big chances, his supply was pretty limited, and I wasn't exactly very impressed by City creatively, as I've spoken about. So I'm happy with the analysis that preceded in terms of the fact that this wasn't the game necessarily to triple captain. I think the XG slightly inflates what actually occurred, and it was more just a couple of bits of brilliance from Savinho, as opposed to the whole performance being good and him racking up XG because City created such a flurry of chances. So I would be slightly careful reading into that. And I'm very happy to still have the triple captainship. If you've used it, obviously you'll be a little bit disappointed with the result, but so what? You've got a long way to go, and it's not the end of the world. It's just one chip, which can only be used once to get 100% EO extra. Not the end of the world. Foden was so isolated in this game, barely got the ball, and when he did get the ball, he wasn't getting in those shooting positions which he normally does. He had one chance really early on in the first half, but in general, he was probably the least effective, I would say, out of City's front five, including Silva and Matthias Nunes. So yeah, I wasn't exactly very impressed, and I think not having the threat from the left just to stretch the block a bit so that he can find a pocket of space in the middle, not having the most suitable partner in terms of the left eight, not having De Bruyne to play with him and create from deeper and progress from deeper so he can kind of just do his thing. I don't think it's actually that great for him. And then on Southampton, I thought they were pretty good. I thought the passing sequences and the way they built was really impressive. They didn't give the ball away too much, and they were quite brave. Punched the ball through City's lines at times really well. I remember one particular Ramsdale pass. They turned him over. They were a little bit of a threat in transition. They could have scored. They made some chances. So overall, and I thought they defended pretty well as well. I thought the block was disciplined, not too much space. Obviously, with City's one-on-one quality just all over the pitch, you're going to get hurt at times, right? And you've obviously got Haaland to deal with, huge box threat. But in general, I thought it was quite good and maybe not as much to one to target as we initially thought. Still a good fixture, but you know what I mean. Brighton versus Wolves, couldn't you justify the 1 million? And this is the thing. Look at how many bonus points he actually finished on. Not just the fact that he finished on 3, but in the 40s, when I think everyone else was in the 20s. So useful. And as a result of those fixtures, I think he's going to be a brilliant buy. And it's the same thing with Brighton, right? That we've been speaking about. Sure, they'll score goals against pretty much everyone, but with their model, they're going to give goals up as well. And if you look at Tony Bloom and his recruitment, I know he likes to keep a trend. And Hertz and De Zerbi, they have things which are polar opposite, but they also have a lot of similarities. And I know Tony Bloom likes a continuation of that. So I don't think this is going anywhere in terms of the game model shifting too much. I think you'll get goals and you can concede goals against them as well. That's just something to note in terms of the fixture analysis that you will do for your own players going forward. Right now, when I watch football, I like to watch it by myself, all right? And as such, I'm only ever in 2 states. For 95% of the game, I am completely emotionless. I just watch it. I enjoy it. Whether my 99% EO threat scores a hat-trick, I'm like, okay, cool, whatever, it happens. And when my players score, I go into ecstasy. And I really celebrate it, right? Because you've got to enjoy the highs. Otherwise, what's the point? What are you even playing for? And then, yeah, other than that, pretty stoic and not so much of a external reaction, nor so internally. But this game, and I say this because this game, I was getting so frustrated. Fulham outdid them physically every single time when the ball was played into the wingers and the Fulham fullbacks were aggressive. They didn't really do too much. They couldn't go past them, so they had to come back inside and lay the ball off. When they went long, I thought the centre-backs did a very good job of dealing with DCL, and he didn't win too many duels. Even in the midfield, when Everton tried to be a bit quicker, physically, they got outdone. It happened again and again and again. And Everton just didn't switch the style of play, and they didn't adjust. They kept going long, and they kept trying to play so quickly. And this is just more so for something down the line, just if you ever see this again. When you are getting outdone physically, what you want to do is you want to slow that game right down. Because the slower you make it, the more you can just keep the ball, right? You can actually have some possession. Everything won't be so frantic. Because when it's so quick, right, there's going to be times where the passes are slightly misplaced. And you're going to have to rely on a little bit of strength at an awkward angle. And then this is where Fulham can leverage their physicality and take the ball off you. Everything has to be so precise when you're doing it so quickly. But you leave yourself a little bit of room for error when you play this slower game model. And I just thought if they just kept the ball, slowed it down, took the physicality out of the equation slightly, they could have done a lot better. And in the first half, when they actually did slow it down, that's when they started to make some chances. But they just continued with the approach. It just frustrated me knowing. There was this instance in the second half where they went back to the keeper, and I was like, yeah, this is good. And the crowd started getting onto them, and I was like, I know now that with the crowd getting onto them, even though they're doing the right thing, they're gonna lose their heads and lose their composure and do something wrong. And then after about 3 seconds, Tarkowski hits it down the line, all the way down the line for DCL. They lose the ball, Fulham recycle and go again. And yeah, so if Everton are going to play like that against sides that are out-muscle them, they will be absolutely dominated. And that is just something for any side to note down the line. When you don't have that level of physicality, slow it down. And if they're not, get rid of those assets from those teams because they're just not going to be able to create much. In terms of the overall performance, DCL obviously disallowed goal. McNeil had one good chance in the first half, but apart from that, not a sniff. So I credit Marco Silva for a good coaching job where I thought that they could potentially be exploitable. They really mitigated what could have been. The ESR burst for the goal, that was really impressive. And I didn't think he had that in his locker at this stage already. So that was really, really impressive. And I think for owners going forward, that's a good sign. Jimenez, I thought, was top. I thought he was utterly brilliant. Just everything about the performance, I loved it so much. And I think with Brentford at home next, he's someone who's going to get points. Brentford at home, Palace away isn't great. Wolves is open to interpretation now that I think the fixtures are calm. It's you're going to have to view him in a slightly different light. But I think he could do quite well. And for minutes, I think he looks fine because I was so impressed with the performance. Forest, similar to the lyrical I've just waxed about Jimenez, so impressed. And Nuno Espirito Santo, not conforming to this style of play that everyone else wants to do or this type of football. Again, so commendable. Leicester were building in a 3-2, and Forest matched it with a 4-2-4 press. They blocked the passes into the pivots. They have two very aggressive fullbacks when the ball goes out, in terms of like you'd have a Leicester centre back. They would hit diagonals into the wingers. The fullbacks would get very aggressive, and then it's very difficult to get out of that from a Leicester standpoint, because you have that two. Remember, it's a 4-2-4, and you have them in close proximity to cover that space and make it a 2-on-1 almost. But the only real way to play is very, very good passing and brave passing through the middle at times, or you just have exceptional wingers. And I thought it was a very good coaching job. And if a lot of teams do build with a 3-2, I think it's 4-2-4 from Forest, considering they have so much physical capacity in the side, and they're just genuinely very intelligent off the ball, and it's understandable given they'll be so well coached. I think it makes a lot of sense that Forest will be difficult to beat, difficult to score against, and keep clean sheets as a result, not concede too many chances. And that's just going down the line. Sels, Murillo, Milenkovic, Ola Aina, all these guys, I think you should really consider them. In terms of Chris Woods, as in so sharp in the box, I think he has the third most goals this calendar year. Haaland and someone aside, that's really, really impressive, especially considering that Nuno, this is about the time, like early last year or early out the year when Nuno came in, and then it just shows how good he's been under him. And I think at his price, with West Ham at home, who have shown defensively susceptible, Newcastle at home, defensively susceptible, then Ipswich 2 weeks after, there's definitely an opportunity there, and no one could criticize you for jumping on the bandwagon and bringing him in. But overall, very, very impressive from Forest, and I think Leicester still want to target. I mean, Palmer, yet again, the best player on the pitch, and was rewarded with the Man of the Match award, rightfully so. I mean, if you see the first Chelsea goal, he didn't get the assist, but the pass for it, wow. And then he gets the second goal, which ends up being the winner. I thought Nick Pope should have done better, and I'm not exactly a big fan of his either. But Palmer probably deserved it, given the performance, and Owens probably deserved it, given the performance. We're going to talk about him later. For a reason, I will talk about him later. I wasn't impressed by Newcastle. They did so well when City came to their place at going man-to-man and then transitioning into a 5-4-1. But they just stayed high, and they allowed Chelsea to play. And the amount of space between the defensive line and the second line, how willing they were to allow themselves to concede opportunities on transition, especially when Chelsea have runners, and Chelsea have one of the best creative passes in the world in Palmer, and you're giving him space between the lines and letting him stay stationed there. You saw how good Jackson did in so many of these, what I will call smaller instances, the ones that go unnoticed. But in the first half, for example, very early on, he receives the ball back to goal, and the centre-back has to follow him because there's so much space, right, that Jackson dropped into. Just turns him in an instant. So I really didn't like the Newcastle approach. I think they got pretty lucky to only lose the game 2-1. Obviously, they had their chances themselves, but I don't think that accounts for what they let Chelsea do. Gusto was getting in some really good positions because obviously he moved Reece to left centre back, Palmer from the right side to the left side. Palmer's been playing outside the block at times, so he comes deep to receive and help play from there. So Gusto was getting in some really good position because he was essentially functioning as a right 8, because you have Lavia and Caicedo on his side. Lavia on his side protecting him. So maybe an option there, because he's shown his willingness to even play Gusto at left back and then invert him when he played at Anfield. So given his versatility, given he can come inside, I think maybe an option. But with Cucurella always there, you will always be worried about expected minutes. So that's something to consider. Jackson, again, so impressive. I'm going to talk about him later. I just be a little bit careful to jump on Newcastle assets right now. They just look like they're, when a side's just not in form and it's just not clicking. I just don't think it is. So I'd be a bit careful there. In terms of Brentford, right? There's so many goals in their games, and you can understand why from like a tactical approach. Their game model is the epitomization of modern day football. It's aggressive, as it says. 4-2-4 on the ball is always going to be susceptible to transition because of how high you are, how many bodies you commit forwards, where you commit the bodies, what your midfield makeup looks like, and what happens, and the space as a result. But on the flip side, you can also score a lot of goals from it. Off the ball, they do go into a 4-4-2, hence why I was talking about transition, because it's harder to set yourself for that. But even still, I've never been a massive fan of this midfield makeup in terms of its qualities in general, specifically off the ball qualities or deep progression abilities. And it's actually one reason I think he went 4-2-4, just to be a little bit more direct, quicker, so that they don't have to rely on it too much, and also utilize their wide areas and balls into like the likes of Wisson and Wemo, and just trying to get up to the pitch pretty quickly. So I think you're always going to be able to score goals against Brentford, but they'll probably be able to score goals against you in a weird way, somewhat similar to Brighton, albeit different styles. I think Ipswich, I think, are the ones to target. If I was looking at one team, for me, it'd be Ipswich. I know McKenna's at the start of the season shown tactical flexibility, but I think just in terms of the player quality and still in terms of the system, there's too much space being offered. I really fancy a lot of teams to put some goals past them. West Ham did it, and they were in dire form and have been since, obviously, but United had to give them the win. So I really like targeting that fixture. I think you didn't learn too much more, aside from the fact that Vissa's back, and we were hyping him up all week, and he returned. And then Mbuemo, I mean, 15-pointer from a penalty, which he didn't even make the challenge like that. And then obviously the cross shot at the end to get you guys a haul. But you know what? Good on you. I'm happy that you guys got the points, even if I didn't. Maybe I should have recorded this first because it is so fresh on my mind. City will be the happiest of the two, given the result. A 2-2 result for Arsenal against a title challenger, similar to the Etihad. I thought Arsenal were brilliant in the first half. So impressed. Couple things to note. Liverpool went 44 off the ball. Standard, but given the press wasn't so intense and it wasn't so aggressive in trying to dispossess either the Arsenal centre-backs, and then they were just blocking the pass into the pivot, Rye's distribution could essentially be leveraged just to bypass the press, and they did that really well. They also dominated the ball, so having McAllister in the side wasn't as helpful because then obviously you'd probably rather have someone more physical off the ball, especially given he's down Bukayo Saka's side. Hence why I think, one reason why I think he moved Jones into there. Szoboszlai came on for McAllister, and Arsenal definitely deserved their lead at half time. Like I said, very good on the ball. Saka, unbelievable. But you come to just expect of him. A lot goes through him. The responsibility is always there, and just the quality of every single action is just elite. So fair play to owners who kept him, and just those who have him in general. Second half, obviously, this momentum swung a lot with Liverpool. I think Gabriel's injury was a big deal. They felt it was there, and they went after a bit more. Liverpool still, I wasn't impressed with them on the ball. I think, for me, I was literally saying to the person I was watching it with, I was like, get Trent on the ball, because they don't really have a creative pass in the middle, and just somehow you're going to need him to unlock. And then that brilliant ball for Nunes, he does so well, and then he lays it off to Salah. Every time Salah gets the ball, though, I think something's going to happen. He's so sharp, and his creative instincts and creative quality is just so superior to most right wingers. If not every right wing on the planet, maybe Bukayo Saka aside, who's going to at least talk to him in that aspect. So yeah, he's going to get you points, and I think you need to get him sooner rather than later. Brighton, Villa, who have been good but not great, as I'm going to talk about, and then Southampton. Yeah, I just think he's the one Liverpool player that's nailed in terms of expected minutes at the front three. That is a front five in terms of the squad. Penalties as well. And a captaincy option when Haaland's not firing. Just all over it. There's a lot more we could talk about with Arsenal, Liverpool, right? But none of it's overly relevant to FPL. One thing I would say is, against PSG, Arsenal uses Havertz on a false right 8, where it is 4-2-4, but like Havertz pulls into that right side so much, and they don't have a recognised centre-back, and Van Dijk and Konate didn't really have anyone to deal with. They did that again, and I think that just takes Havertz away from goal. And we've obviously spoken about proximity theory in the past, specifically with Eze, who was very unlucky not to return many a time this season. And I think just pulling Havertz away, especially given his finishing isn't as consistent as I would like it to be at the moment. I think he's maybe someone you could look to relinquish, and we'll see my transfer plans. And Villa dominated, and I think it's a very typical Villa game this season. Better than the opposition. They were good themselves, but not great. Slower build-up, which limits the volume of opportunities they can see on transition, which was a problem last year. And this time, the centre-backs had quite a good game, so they weren't really getting in trouble anywhere else. This is the one that wiped the Consa 9-pointer at the end, but so be it. Watkins is a magnet. So much goes to him, and in such good areas, I think he's going to keep ticking along with points. So if you have him and you want a secure source of points, and you're not too worried about the funds, although it should be. Great option. Bournemouth home versus away again, right? They've showed it again. Away from home, bigger pitch, not having the crowd on your side, difficult to get that high press going, especially if you go behind or things aren't really going your way to shift that momentum. But at home, completely different story. So something to keep in mind. I don't think we learned anything particularly new. Pretty much everything was pretty standard, and I think we can move on. Right, you probably weren't expecting this, and 36 hours ago, neither was I. But I look at my team, and I think, okay, maybe McNeil's injured. I'm not exactly overly encouraged at the prospect of DCL at Southampton, given what I've seen, given what I saw against Fulham in terms of how poor they were in terms of their passing sequences. And he is just so out of form. Looks a bit shot of confidence. Beto's just scored, so I imagine he'll definitely come on and eat into his minutes. So that's not 90 anymore. Gabriel might be injured. Then I've got Rodgers away to Spurs, which isn't bad, but like it's not the greatest fixture. Also Conter away. I have Foden and Haaland, where I don't necessarily, in the usual circumstance, all right, this is a good fixture for Phil Foden, right? For the reasons I discussed in the preview last time. But this time, with all the conditions now, and the fact that he still hasn't hit that rhythm now, is it a good fixture? If I'm looking to go off Haaland in 12, the squad structure looks really good without Haaland. And I don't massively like this fixture for him. Is it a good time just to go off? A lot of people aren't even going to be able to get to Salah. Never mind, I'll have Salah, as I do already, but also all the rest of the trimmings. Prices, I feel like, are pretty volatile with the fixture swings coming up. I can save myself a lot of money there. Gabriel might be injured. I can sort that out. So all of these things are starting to play into my head, and I'm really, really considering it because there are some plays that I really would like. So let's look at a quick draft I've built and just go through it, and then we'll have a video later next week that expresses it in more detail. Okay, now with this, compare my team, or have my team in your thoughts, at least alongside, so you can kind of see where I'm at. Now, I know I've got Gabriel here. He might be injured as a result of the Liverpool game, but I would really like him because when I'm building this wildcard, I'm not building it for 1 week. I'm building it for a long time so that I don't have so many issues. And also, this Christmas period is coming up. I don't want to have a very thin squad. I want a bit more, in the squad, a bit more protection. And having someone like Gabriel, who maybe doesn't have the best fixtures with Newcastle away, Chelsea away, but he's got good fixtures down the line, and I'll want him down the line, and he's got attacking upside from set pieces, well, it makes sense to have him. Sels is just there for the obvious reasons. People will be like, oh, the fixture run's not that good for a while. But you know what? West Ham at home, Newcastle at home, I fancy a haul. One of them. Ipswich like the week between Arsenal and City. All right, Arsenal and City away is not ideal. But you see 1.1 in the bank there, right? I could just go and get a second keeper who has good fixtures in that week, and I'll still have some money left over. That is something I could do. Or I could just play him. At least the save potential will be high. He did it at Anfield, did he not? We know how Forest are going to play. They're going to make it very difficult. If De Bruyne is not back by that time, if Odegaard's not back by that time, maybe they'll really struggle against this low block, which they won't have to face too much this season, given the way teams are playing. So I like that. Ainori, for the obvious reasons. Guardiola, given the positions he's getting into and given the quality just in open play, I feel like he's such a huge goal threat. I may as well just keep him forever. And also in the big games, that's where he's more likely to play his more attacking role. So even if the fixtures are quote unquote bad for him, they might be bad for his clean sheet prospects, but they might be good for his attacking prospects. And maybe he'll just combine the two and get me a haul, and that will pretty much pay itself. Mazraoui, Leicester at home, and Ipswich away in those 2 weeks. And United can keep clean sheets. They've shown that, right? He can also get attacking returns. He's shown that. So there's an option there. Maybe I go Dalot. He's got into some really good positions. He should have scored in their last game against Brentford. He should have scored today, considering he missed an open goal. Maybe I upgrade him. I've got 1.1 in the bank, right? And then Van der Berg being the 4.0. Okay, and is that so different to my defense now? Well, yes and no. I lose Conser and Hall, and I get a lot more security in terms of I get the attacking upside of Ainori and Mazraoui, but also get much better fixtures. But that's not really why I'm wildcarding. You will see there Cole Palmer and Nicholas Jackson. I think Chelsea could really, really hurt Man United. And not having either of those two for next week, I don't like it. People will say, oh, Arsenal the week after. I think Chelsea can score against Arsenal, especially at home. And like I told you, I'm building this down the line. And I'm going to be priced out if I don't make this wild card happen kind of soon. Because this week didn't go as I thought it was going to go, or maybe as I would have liked, quote unquote. And therefore, the price rises are really going to hurt me. And one thing that was apparent, that if the price rises did go against me, I would potentially have to keep DCL, or I would have to sell him for someone that isn't Cunha, and I wasn't really interested in doing that. The other thing is, I get to get Saka back, and you'll see no Kai Havertz here. I obviously spoke earlier about that false right 8 role and his finishing. Now you understand why. I could fit him in the structure realistically, but Newcastle away, where they'll go even more defensive. Chelsea away, where they'll go even more defensive. Then it's Forest, which is just genuinely a difficult fixture from an attacking standpoint. He doesn't look like he's going to haul too often. But then I get someone like Jackson, who looks deadly at the moment. I get Cunha, penalties, 90 minutes, great fixtures. I get Chris Wood, who's like one of the most informed strikers in the world. Okay, all of a sudden, it's looking a lot better. And I get to get rid of DCL. Then I get Saka back in as well as just the guy who's going to have beyond set pieces for the best set piece taking team in the world, penalties, so instrumental, pretty much 90, well, at least 80 minutes, I feel like, every game. And then obviously the main thing was, and I speak about it again, Cole Palmer, Cole Palmer, Cole Palmer. I was lucky to get away with only a 10-pointer today. And I watched him and it was very uncomfortable, even as a Chelsea fan watching him. So I would like to get him in ASAP. And then Garnacho for the Leicester Ipswich fixture. He's shown his goal threat. He's shown he can be good in terms of expected minutes. Ten Hag likes him in that sense. So that's a nice little 2-week punt. And then after that, what can I do? I can move him on for the next 2-week punt at that price point. And the next, and the next, and just keep doing that. Where there is depth in my squad, and there is a lot of it. Rodgers, I think, I paid 5 million for him. I may as well keep it. The main thing here is I'm selling Erling Haaland and the Everton boys before Southampton. I covered selling the Everton boys a bit earlier. I just wasn't very impressed. And I feel like I'm not as confident going into that game or anywhere close. And do I really want to rely on Everton when I could just rely on Palmer and Jackson away at Old Trafford? No, not really. But the obvious thing is no Haaland. I don't like the fixture that much in terms of Bournemouth away, especially without De Bruyne. From 12, it's not easy. Spurs, yes, their system definitely helps Haaland, but with the quality of centre-backs, especially the physicality of Van de Ven, and the fact that Spurs always make it a little bit difficult, and City aren't really hitting this stride, then Liverpool Forest after, which is not nice. So you want to be off sooner rather than later. It's just Brighton and 11. And yeah, I would probably I would definitely captain him if I had that. But that is just one fixture for one player. And you know what? Even if he does score the breaks, it's not the end of the world, considering how much firepower I have elsewhere, considering the quality of my strikers, and considering the quality of captain options as well. So for me, I'm really considering it. That's where my head's at. That's what my thoughts are with the wildcard. And I will make a whole video where I go through it in some depth. We look at the transfer plans for it. We look at the strategy. But this is just my fresh thoughts about the wildcard and potentially going there. And that is all she wrote. Now, I would say in terms of the transfer plans, I am leaning towards wildcarding. Hence why the other graphic was in there. It is genuinely quite likely I wildcard. And I thought I'd just put that across to you. What I'm going to do after this video and after I edit, etc., is give it some real thought and then come to a decision. Because the team's not bad for next week. I just think it's quite far from optimal. Players are getting injured. Players are out of form on my side. And there's just a lot of other good picks. There's obviously no Brian and Mbeumo. I'm going to speak about that in my wildcard video later this week. But yeah, that's where I've ended up. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for all your support. It's been magnificent and it just increases week on week on week. If you could press the like button on the video, I would be greatly appreciative. If you could subscribe. And I would love to hear what you would do with this team. Please do tell me. And that's about it. I shall see you very shortly, maybe in a couple of days or so, for a wildcard video. And until then, have a great week. Make it a great week. And goodbye.